Hello, welcome to Makeup and Monarchies. My name is Tiffany and I am a makeup artist, cosmetologist, and lover of medieval UK history. If you're new here, welcome. Hi, glad you're here. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so by hitting subscribe and ringing the bell down below so that you get notifications when I post. If you like the products that I'm using or want to know what I'm using, sometimes I talk about it, but it's all listed in the description of the episode down below. If you have a question during this, feel free to comment. I do reply. I do like them. I think that's it. So we're going to get right into Henry Part 2. Hello. So, my throat's all gross. So where we left off last time was January 24th, 25th of 1533. Henry and Anne had secretly married. At this point, Henry had been trying to, or having acts passed through Parliament and to basically yeet Rome out of the monarchy and the crown. Instead, he was founding the Church of England, to which he'd be the head of. It was March 30th of 1533, and Thomas Cranmer was appointed as the Archbishop of Canterbury by Henry. Cranmer formally annuls the marriage between Henry and Catherine on May 23rd, and Anne Boleyn is crowned queen on June 1st. Side note, ow, that fucking hurt. Has anybody done the update on the phone, like the iPhone and the Mac? Because it's now syncing my do not disturb disturbed flashback. That's really cool. Anyways, so Henry and Catherine's marriage is annulled on May 23rd. Anne is crowned on June 1st. She gives birth to their first child, a little girl named Elizabeth, on September 7th. Their daughter was named after Henry's mother and grandmother. Well, probably just the mother, but Elizabeth got her name from her mother. So Elizabeth Woodville and Elizabeth of York, Queens. Those are my gals. So come 1534, the Reformation stuff was like really underway. In April, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, which declared Henry's daughter, Mary, from Catherine, illegitimate. Thomas Cromwell pushes the Treason Act through Parliament. This act forbid people to speak out and criticize the king or his policies. After that came the Act of Supremacy, and that declared Henry the head of the Church of England, and it was now required to take the oath of supremacy. And if someone did not take this oath, they would be tried for high treason under the Treasons Act of 1534. This could be punishable by death. Thomas More, who we talked about in Henry Part 1, was one that found this out the hard way. More refused to attend Anne's coronation, which was the previous year, and it was, while it wasn't treason, it was considered a snub against Anne. So April 13th, 1534, More was asked to come and before commission and swear his allegiance to Parliament's Act of Succession. He accepted their right to declare Anne Queen of England, but refused the spiritual validity of the king's second marriage. Because he was a pious man, he held onto the teaching of papal supremacy and refused to take the oath of supremacy. He then publicly refused to uphold Henry's annulment from Catherine. John Fisher was one that also refused to take the oath, and Thomas More, then refused to sign the oath of succession, and that did him in. Henry had Thomas More imprisoned in the Tower of London, and while he was there, Cromwell visited him several times trying to convince him to take the oath. He went to trial and was found guilty, and he was executed on July 6th of 1535 at Tower Hill. So exactly a year after More's execution, Henry and Cromwell tried to push a bill through Parliament. I can't talk today, that began the dissolution of the monasteries in England and Wales. Henry had monasteries, priories, convents, and friaries disbanded. This went on for over 5 years, and the assets were disposed. The income that they got was sent elsewhere. Now, these monasteries and these religious houses had been around for centuries. Some of them dated back to the Anglo-Saxons and had Celtic origins, like before Norman conquest, that old. Now, I'm a bit bitter about this about 500 years later. Why? I'm glad that you asked. Because during this, the tomb of Alfred the Great was destroyed, so he was like, there's nothing left of him. So, which is an absolute shame because he was good. He was a good king. I'm sure you can imagine that the feelings on this whole thing was mixed. And there was a northern rising called the Pilgrimage of Grace. And I'm not going to go fully into this because it's very involved. There are a lot of moving pieces to that. And I could probably do a whole episode on it. And I just may in the future. But this didn't end well for a lot of people. And a lot were executed for it. That did go on. The Pilgrimage of Grace went on for quite some time. So we're going to touch on it again in a little bit. So after a few years of marriage, Anne and Henry were like, things weren't going well. After the birth of Elizabeth, Anne suffered a few more miscarriages and Henry was growing frustrated. Listen, wife number 2 and you still having issues. I think that it's time to find the common denominator, sir. Your sperm ain't no good. So Henry started having an affair with either Madge. It could have been either Madge or her sister Mary Shelton. Like there's the historians like go back and forth on this and who they think it was. Henry had started discussions with Cranmer and Cromwell on what his chances on leaving Anne and not having to return to Catherine were. Jesus Christ. Okay. On January 7th of 1536, Catherine of Aragon passes away. We talked about that last week, so because I have a whole episode dedicated to her. Henry and Anne got the news on the 8th, the next day. The day after that, on the 9th, Henry dresses all in yellow. And I kind of like touched on this on my last episode. This could have been interpreted, yellow was the Spanish color of mourning, like we wear black. The Spanish wore yellow. So it could have been he wore that for mourning and respect for her, or it could have been like interpreted as he was celebrating her death. That's something I wanted. If you watched last week's episode, I didn't want to say that because I found it disrespectful to say that during an episode about Catherine. It's also said that both Anne and Henry cried privately. Ooh, I'm reaching for a brush. It's said that Anne and Henry cried privately after receiving the news. Now, I do wonder if this is true. You have to remember that Henry was married to Catherine for 24 years. That's a long, long time. My parents have been married for like 40 something years, but still 24 years is a long time. Anne was her lady in waiting. So they were close. Like she waited on her or like assisted her. So at this point also, Anne was pregnant again, but miscarried a baby boy on the day of Catherine's funeral on January 29th. A few days prior to her funeral, Henry was in a jousting match and got a bad wound, like a severe accident. He was knocked out for like 2 hours and they thought he was going to die. He didn't, obviously, or else this would be the end of the story. But it left him with a really bad wound that turned into an ulcer that he had for the rest of his life. And legend says that it was this event that changed his personality and he started to be a tyrant after this. I think that's like strange. I think that was in him all the time, but maybe he was in pain and that's why he became that way. Who knows? I think he was already like that and they're just using that as an excuse. Okay, I'm back. So after Anne's miscarriages, shit really went south for her. It was about this time that Henry started having an affair with Jane Seymour, who was one of her ladies in waiting, and she had been moved to new rooms. Another annulment was for Henry was becoming a possibility. A lot of people are against her, Anne, because of her attitude towards things, but I'm sure she was frustrated, and it's not her fault that she kept losing babies. I think she really did grow to love Henry and wanted to give him boys, but nevertheless. Also, another reason why people were against her is because her family favored an alliance with France over the emperor. Anne's brother, George, was refused the Order of the Garter. Allegations of conspiracy, adultery, or witchcraft started to float around. Between April 30th and May 2nd of 36, George and 4 other men were arrested on charges of treason due to adultery or having sexual relationships with the queen. Hello, Jamie and Cersei. Just kidding. Just kidding. I know that it was bullshit charges. Anne was confined to the Tower on May 2nd. May 17th, the men were executed for their charges, and Cranmer annuls the marriage between Henry and Anne. There is some difficulty in this, but they found grounds on the affair Henry had with her sister, Mary, prior to their marriage. Well, karma drove her damn bus his way, didn't she? Wasn't this the same rap he got, or he accused Catherine of? Or, like, that's how he had that annulled? Anyways, whatever. What the fuck? Anne was executed at 8 a.m. on May 19th. Now, I'm not going to get into this now, but because that's part of Anne's story, I think that we should just talk about that with Anne. So Henry married Jane almost immediately after Anne's death. I've seen 2 dates float around, either May 21st or May 30th. They were married at the Palace of Whitehall by Stephen Gardiner, who was the Bishop of Windsor. It's said that this marriage was one of love, but when it comes to Henry, I'm not sure how in love he could actually be. As a wedding gift, he gave Jane 104 manors in 4 counties, as well as forests and hunting chases, which would give her money, because she would now own it and get the rent from it, essentially, right? So she was proclaimed queen on June 4th, but was never crowned because the plague was going around London. And while she wasn't, she tried to have his daughter Mary restored as a successor, but she wasn't able to achieve that. She did, however, reconcile Henry's relationship with Mary. Jane became pregnant in January of 1537. In September, she went into confinement and then gave birth to a baby boy, Edward, on October 12th at Hampton Court Palace. There's more here, but that's Jane's story, and we'll get there with Jane. Jane died on October 24th at Hampton Court Palace due to either a retained placenta, or childbed fever, which is a postpartum infection. Personally, I think this was part of Henry's downfall. Reason being is that Jane died exactly how his mother died, and I think there was probably some PTSD there. In the same year, Henry's cousin once removed, the cousin stuff, I don't know, it gets confusing to me, but Henry's cousin, Reginald Pole, was made cardinal. He wasn't ordained, but they still made him a cardinal. Now, Reggie had been stirring up some drama in 1531 by warning the dangers that would occur if a Boleyn marriage had happened. ESB, maybe? Remember the Pilgrimage of Grace that we talked about? Well, Reggie was assigned, I call him Reggie, that's not what they call him, but Reggie was assigned to be in charge of that. And in 1537 by Pope Paul. Once this pilgrimage moved to London, the government tried to assassinate Reggie, and they didn't succeed. I'm gonna jump off really quick and do my liner. I will be right back. Come 1530, Cromwell is still on the warpath against the old religion, and because of this, Henry is excommunicated by Pope Paul III on December 17th. Oh, I'm just gonna go in with this and lightly. Cromwell was also negotiating a secret treaty with Charles V, and marriages were proposed for Mary and little Elizabeth, who was like really tiny. Meanwhile, Geoffrey Pole, who was Reggie's brother, they were both sons to Margaret Pole, who was the daughter of George, Duke of Clarence, and Isabel Neville. So Geoffrey had been talking and corresponding with his brother Margaret. So because Geoffrey was talking to Reginald, he was imprisoned. Margaret had been heavily involved in court. She was involved with taking care of Arthur and Catherine. So she's I don't know, this all gets awful. And I love Margaret Pole. I really love her, and I really would love to do an episode on her. Anyways, so Margaret and others were attainted for their involvement and were imprisoned. She was held in the Tower alongside her grandson, Henry, which was the son of her son, Henry, and her cousin, Exeter's son. So the following year, Henry approved the Bible being translated into English. I found that so fascinating. I didn't know that prior. I mean, obviously I knew it wasn't always in English, but I didn't know that he did that. Parliament passed an act to close all the monasteries in England and Wales. At this time, Charles V, the Emperor, and Francis I of France made peace, and this made Henry very paranoid. Cromwell suggested a 25-year-old Anne of Cleves as the next wife for Henry. She was the sister of the Duke of Cleves, who was seen as an important ally in case or in the event there was a Roman attack on England. There were a few prospects, I can't say that word today, of wives on the table for Henry, but Hans Holbein the Younger was sent to paint a portrait of Anne for Henry. Funny enough that I'm doing, oh shit, I didn't blend that in. Funny enough, I'm talking about this today. So this is going to come out on Tuesday. I am filming on March 14th. It's a Thursday today. Yesterday, they released the image of Anne of Cleves cleaned up that Hans Holbein did. I did post it on my stories on Instagram, but it is, I mean, the colors are unbelievable. And what we see now of these portraits, they're all a little weathered looking. Let's say weathered. So to see it really cleaned up is very vibrant, more vibrant than I think that any of us thought it would be. It is actually a beautiful portrait. So that is at the Louvre in Petty. So it's thought that the portrait itself was painted in a flattering way, but it's now thought that it was probably very accurate. So Henry agreed to marry her. Anne arrived in London New Year's Day on 1540. Henry wasn't impressed with her, but the marriage still went through, and they were married that same month. The marriage was never consummated, and Henry was looking for an out. Anne didn't fight this. Anne confirmed that it was not that they never consummated the marriage. Her previous betrothal was the basis on how they were going to dissolve this marriage. All the while that this is happening, is on the hunt for a new bride for Henry. He was looking at his niece, Catherine Howard, as the next wife. So this, I'm gonna do little Genevieve did a cute little trick. So she mixes her blush, the Sunset Blush, with the Nova Glow highlighter. So that's what I'm gonna do today. It is very springy out today here in New England. I'm excited, I'm happy. Give me the summer weather, please. I'm here for it. So I'm just mixing, this is Holy Chic and the Nova Glow, and then this, for the Sunset Blush Balm, I have a Rosa. So I'm just gonna mix these two together on my hand and then go in. Oh, it's really pretty. I go back and load my brush and come in. Oh, I really like that. I love this color, this Rosa color. Now, I don't typically highlight my nose, but it has some color to it. Oh, that's really nice. Ooh, I don't usually do that either. That's real nice. I like that. So, oh my God, do you hear Jack snoring? Cats, man. They snore worse than adults sometimes, or humans. Cromwell was arrested on June 10th on the charges of treason and hearsay and was imprisoned in the Tower. Oh my God, you hear him? I'm just gonna jump off and finish my powder. Oh no. So Henry's marriage to Anne of Cleves was formally annulled on July 12th of 1540. Anne received the title of the king's sister, which is a little odd, but 2 houses and a good size allowance. They had she remained in England after the annulment, and they had a decent friendship, and he was very good to her after they were everything was said and done. So I wonder if, I think she's the only lucky one, right, that escaped with no issue. I am going to jump off and do my eyes really quick, and then I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I have filmed this entire goddamn video, and I did not plug my microphone in. So if it's echoey today, I am apologizing profusely ahead of time, or after, not ahead of time, after. I'm going to try something with my lips today. I'm going to go in with the VIII Modern Lip Designer, and I'm going to see if I can do like a grungy look with this. I'm trying something, bear with me. So about 2 weeks after Henry and Anne of Cleves' marriage was annulled. Let's hope this looks good. So I went in with that first. Now I'm using Griffin matte lipstick from Anastasia. This is an oldie but a goodie. And then I'm gonna go in with the Jamie Genevieve MAC lipstick. Again, oldie but goodie. Oh, I need a brush to clean that up. I actually really like that. That looks cool. I ain't done a lip like this in a hot minute. Let me tell you, my little self as a high schooler, little goth high schooler, is dying right now. My little goth heart. Okay, so 2 weeks after their marriage was dissolved, Henry got married again. So on July 28th, Henry married, ooh, sorry, that's the mirror. Henry married again, and he married Catherine, a 17-year-old Catherine Howard. He was almost 50 at this point. On that same day that they were married, Cromwell was executed on Tower Hill. So that is today's episode for Henry. This is part 2 of Henry. Our fun facts for this episode are: Henry sent more men and women for execution than any other English monarch. Anne of Cleves was the shortest marriage, only lasting 6 months. He was known as the Golden Prince because he wrote music and poetry and played all the sports at Tudor court. And 10 stone beasts lined the moat of Hampton Court Palace. They're still there, and they symbolized Henry's right to rule. They represent him and his third wife, Jane Seymour. Everything I used today is going to be listed down below. Next week, we are going to do, we're going to do an episode on Anne Boleyn. If you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up, please. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. And when you do that, please just click the drop down and ring the bell so that you get notifications when I post. If you're not following me on Instagram and TikTok, it's the same, handle. It's at Makeup and Monarchies, same as here. I think so. On Instagram, I post if there's an interesting fact or on this day thing, I'll post about it. Lately there has for the end of last week, there really wasn't much of anything, but I do share things that I find interesting, or if it has something to do with what I'm talking about. I'd like to get into doing more lives if I get more followers. That would be fun. So I think that's it for today. Come back next week and we're going to talk Anne Boleyn. I hope you have a good one. Have a great day. Have a good rest of your week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.